In today's video, you get the full behind the scenes of my wildlife photography workflow. What is going on, everyone? It's Rylan with Rylan's Amazing Photography, and in today's video I'm going to show you all the full behind the scenes of my wildlife photography workflow. Literally everything from start to finish, from me going out in the field to me getting the final edit of the photo that I was able to take. So I'm about to go out in the field. I just want to clarify today I am using my Nikon D500 with my 200 to 500 f5.6 Nikon lens. The plan is to look for any kind of wildlife. I have nothing in mind in particular, whether it be birds or some other kind of animal. So we're going to go outside and we're going to look for some wildlife and we're going to take some photos, and then we're going to come back down in here to my office and I am going to show you how I edit the photos. Or photo. It just depends, but you all are going to get to see my work in Lightroom and Photoshop as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and go outside. So now I am outside and I'm going to look for some wildlife, whether that be birds or something else. This is where the process begins. So I've got my gear and now I'm going to find something to photograph. So the reason I chose to get out at this time of the day is because it is near the afternoon. It is the afternoon. It's beginning to be the start of golden hour, which is the best time for photography, but it's not always the best time to see wildlife. So hopefully, nonetheless, I am going to have some luck. A lot of the times I get out more in the middle of the day than I do during golden hour, and while I don't get as good of shots during the day, there's more birds out active and moving around. And other wildlife like deer, they will come out closer to golden hour, but they usually come out more in blue hour. And turkey, they're out all day long as well, and this is around the time that they go to roost. So hopefully I will see some kind of wildlife, regardless what that might be. But one of the things in the whole process of my workflow, I don't always find wildlife, and if I don't, obviously that's rather unfortunate. But the first thing I have to do is come outside and look for wildlife before I'm able to photograph any. I just got a visual on a dark-eyed junco. It's still over there. As I speak, I can somewhat see it. It's going to be difficult to get close to the bird from where it's at, but nonetheless I do have some photos and I'm going to try. So wish me luck. So typically, dark-eyed junco are very skittish birds, but that bird was in really good lighting with the sun shining on it, and it just didn't care. Like, I got so close to that bird. Usually the only way that you can get like super close to those birds is by simply being in a blind and one of them comes to you. But my strategy for taking bird pictures is always to, as soon as you see the bird, take a picture and just slowly move in as you go without, with doing your best to not scare away the animal and mess them up in their natural habitat. And I got way close to that bird and it just wasn't scared of me at all. And that's why I always wear camo as well. I'm not sure if that helped in this case, but the bird didn't seem bothered that I was there, or just didn't understand that I was there. So at least this trip was worthwhile. But what I'm gonna do right now is look for some more birds, and if I don't have any luck with that, we'll move on to the next part of my workflow. So here recently I have spotted a pileated woodpecker, decently close, like for a pileated woodpecker. But both of the times that I spotted it, I didn't have the right lens with me. I was doing a different kind of photography when I spotted it. So I'm gonna go to the location to where I spotted it a couple of times. This isn't the kind of time of day that it was spotted, but nonetheless I am gonna go just for the slim chance that I might see one and get a better picture. I only have one picture of that species of bird, and I would love to have some more to add to my portfolio. So let's go check it out. So unfortunately I've not seen any more birds and I don't have much more time out here. So I'm actually going to go inside, and since the weather is warming up, there are a lot of mosquitoes and ticks out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in the shower, then I'm going to upload the images to my computer, and then I'll start editing, and you all will get to join me then. So as you can see, we are now in my office. Back behind me here, the photos from today are exporting. I mean, what do you all think of this wide shot? I wish that I could get the full photos above in frame, but it's just not possible because they're super big. But I love my office, so I wanted to show a little bit of a wider perspective. As soon as these photos back here are done uploading to my computer, I'm going to put them in Lightroom and start the editing process. And yeah, so let's go ahead and hop on my computer. Okay everyone, so as you can see, we are now on the computer, and let me just say that this iMac is the best thing that I've ever edited on in my entire life. If you need a computer, I totally recommend the iMac. It is fast, it's amazing, it runs Lightroom and Photoshop pretty much perfectly. So as you can see, this is my XQD card here from the photos of today. I'm going to go ahead and eject this, and I'm ejecting the XQD card because I have already exported those photos to my portable hard drive. So that's good. I totally recommend having a portable hard drive as a photographer because it's just a really great way to back up your photos. I save my SD cards because my camera has 2 card slots, so I save the SDs, and I usually clear my XQD card and reuse it, and then I also back up the photos on my portable hard drive. So that's very handy. I think mine is 2 terabytes. So now what I'm going to do is, now that I'm in Lightroom, I'm going to press File, then I'm going to import photos and videos. And so now I go onto my portable hard drive, and the category that I uploaded these to is wildlife, and then I scroll all the way down to upload 97, and all of today's photos are on here. Something that needs to be mentioned is, once I said I was going to go back into the office, as you can see at the bottom here, there are some cardinal photos. I did run into a cardinal on my way home, so I took some photos of that as well, and we'll see if we can fix those because they're major overexposed, and that is why I need a mirrorless camera, because that wouldn't be as big of a problem. But luckily, since it's raw files, I should be able to recover anyways. So a good technique, I think I mentioned this earlier in the video, but a technique that I use very often is to start taking the photos far away and then just slowly move in as you go. And as you can kind of see just on this initial preview screen, this photo here, you can kind of see where my mouse is at. That is the dark-eyed junco there. And then as we move down, you can obviously see that I was able to get way closer to the bird. So that's a good tactic to use. A lot of people will start at the bottom of their photos just so they're already as close to the subject as they get, but I will usually still start at the top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press D and go into the develop area, and now I can edit the photos. So when I zoomed into this, you can see that it is not entirely in focus, so let's check out the next one. and it's not really sharp either, so we're just going to scrap those photos. We're not going to use those. Here I'm notably closer, but the bird doesn't have a good pose. However, I do really love like the color scheme in this photo. You can see like there's some white, there's some like light blue colors and some light green, and I think that all blends really well with the bird. So hopefully I get, yeah, that's a nice pose. It is a little bit noisy, but that's something that's fixable. Let's see if I got a better pose than that. Oh, see, at this point that's completely out of focus, and that just happens sometimes when, you know, you're going into a shoot and you're just snapping and snapping to make sure that you get the right pose. But for the first photo that I'm going to edit, I'm going to simply stick with this pose. So I do crop. I'm a cropper, so I'm going to crop it in a little bit to about right there. Looks pretty good. I'm going to pop some contrast up. I'm going to bring up the shadows ever so slightly. I'm going to bring down the highlights a little bit. That was too much, I think. I'm just going to up the exposure a little bit, not even a third of a stop. Then I like to add a little clarity. I don't go crazy with it unless it's like a landscape photo. Then I'll add a little more than what I regularly do. But I think clarity kind of almost sharpens the image in a way. A lot of people don't think it looks very realistic, but I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to up the vibrance here too, and even the saturation a little bit. I usually don't do much with the saturation, just because I do think that gives kind of an unrealistic perspective to the picture, but I think that vibrance is a really good way to make your subject stand out. I'm going to go down here and I am going to sharpen it a little bit. I usually like to bring it up anywhere between 70 and 90. For this photo I'm going to do 80, and then this photo isn't noisy enough to bring into Topaz, but it does have a little bit of noise, so I'll use the noise reduction in Lightroom, and then I bring the detail all the way up to 100. This isn't going to be the greatest photo I have, but nonetheless there is still a little bit of editing that I want to do in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Edit in Adobe Photoshop 2021. And now we wait, so I will cut to when this photo loads in Photoshop. Okay, so now we are here in Photoshop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the layer, and immediately I'm going to do Command C and Command V just so I have a backup copy of the photo in case something goes wrong. We can always fall back on that. So what I like to do with subjects, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this photo because I'm pretty confident that there are some better photos in what we got than this one, but I still want to take my time to edit this as well. So I click W on my keyboard, or you can click the magic wand tool over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the bird. Now, the conditions that this bird is in, it is a little difficult for Photoshop to entirely recognize what it's supposed to be highlighting because there are a lot of just neutral tones in this photo. I'm not going to worry about getting the feet in focus because they're not really important to the photo, but the tail feathers and all of the regular feathers are, and I do want the beak to be outlined as well. So now that I've got that, I'm going to copy this layer as soon as I get that pretty good. It's not 100%. I want to get this beak here just a smidge better. There's not a lot that you can do when there's a lot of neutral tones like this. This beak is similar to the colors of the sticks in the background, so it's a little difficult to work with. I also want to get this stick here that is in between the parts of the bird's body. I want to just get it out. Like, we don't care about this stick. In fact, we wish it wasn't there, but we're not going to edit it out this time in particular. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click Command C and Command V. That's added a layer of the bird on top of the bird. If I move it here, you can see there's what we've masked out. I'm going to click Command Z just to undo where I moved that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a filter called High Pass. What this does is it barely, just ever so slightly, will somewhat add sharpening to the image. It'll just make the subject stand out a little bit better. So as you can see, I've got it on about 1. I usually try to do this between 0.8 and like 1.5. I don't go much over that, and it's difficult to tell because initially it just adds like this neutral gray tone over it. So what you have to do is you have to go over here and click Overlay to see the final result. And if I click on and off, you can see that it barely just kind of boosts the sharpening of the bird. It doesn't add a huge difference, but it does add somewhat of one. So now I'm going to click Command-Shift-E, and what that does is it merges all of those layers together. I'm going to copy this again and paste another layer just for a backup in case we mess up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click W and outline the entire bird like I just did again. And there's a reason for this, which you will obviously see shortly. But basically what I'm going to do here is make this bird stand out even more and ensure that it is the primary focus of the image. When there's a lot of like kind of distracting sticks and stuff in the image, I do like to do this, and obviously this image it has the potential to be very distracting because there's just so many sticks and twigs that are sticking out, and I don't want the viewer to be distracted and get the wrong impression of what to look at. I think it's pretty obvious, but if someone else looks, they might be, oh, look at this tree over here. I don't think anyone would do that, but doing what I'm about to do ensures that they won't. I just want to mask out this stick like we did last time, because we don't care about this stick one bit. We wish it wasn't in the hair, but like I said, we're not going to take it out. So that's pretty decent. It's not perfect, neither was the last one, but that's okay. And this time, instead of copying the layer and masking it out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and click Select. Now I'm going to go to Inverse. You can also do this by doing Shift-Command-I. And what that does is, rather than selecting the bird, it selects everything else in the photo. You can see that it's outlining the entire image. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Command-C and Command-V and copy that. Now on this layer, if we get rid of these two, you can see that it's the entire image, only that it has not the bird in it. So what I'm going to do on this layer is go up here to Filter, and I'm going to use a type of blur, and it's called Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur is a lot like bokeh on your camera. You don't want to go crazy on this, or it's going to be obvious that you've added some blur. I like to keep it somewhere between usually 1 and 2 in that range. Sometimes that can be a little far-fetched, but for this photo I think it looks kind of nice. It is a little unrealistic on this twig, but unless you're a photographer, you're probably not going to notice that. So for this photo I'm going to do 1.2, and now Command-Shift-E and all of my layers are merged, and this is going to be the final photo. I think it looks pretty good. Normally I would dodge and burn some as well, but for this particular photo where it's not going to be the greatest photo, I'm not going to dodge and burn on this one in particular. So I'm going to go ahead and export this file. I go to File and then Export As. There's supposed to be some kind of keyboard shortcut for that, but I don't know it because it's pretty complicated. I really wish that they would have made it like Lightroom, which is just Command-Shift-E, but they didn't, so that's rather unfortunate. I'm going to go ahead and export this photo, then I'll take you all back into Lightroom with me and we can check out the rest of the photos. Okay, so I am now back in Lightroom, and here's the photo that we just edited, and you can see a pretty decent difference after the Gaussian blur and the filter high pass. So now I'm going to continue to go through some more of these photos and see if I get a good pose, and I want this next shot to be closer than the previous one. This is a little bit closer, but obviously the bird's not looking at us. Okay, we might be getting somewhere here. That is really good and sharp there, so that's definitely one that I will need to consider, but I do get closer to the bird, yeah. Okay. See, these photos I was really frustrated with because this stick is in the way, and obviously when you're working out in nature, that's just something that you can't help. It's just you don't have control of the environment around you, which is usually rather unfortunate. Okay, this is a good pose. I like this. But there's still a bit of, you can just see that there's some kind of stick that's probably really close to me that's just been blurred out. And this bird was absolutely beautiful. It was cleaning its feathers, and it was just, you know, spread them out, and it looked all fluffy, and so that's really good. Okay, so we might be getting somewhere with this photo. I think I'm going to edit this one. As much as I like this photo, I also really liked the other photo somewhere in here. where I got some eye contact, but we weren't super close to the bird yet. So I think that might be something that I want to mess with as well. I'm not sure where it was. This one maybe? Yeah, this was it. So I'm actually going to edit this one first, and I'm not going to bring this one into Photoshop at all because we see that we do have a lot better shot, but I still like to edit the not as good shots as well, just so I kind of have some, just to say, oh yeah, I had a wonderful encounter with this bird, which I did. So what I'm doing, I really like to pump up contrast in my image, and this is a difficult shot because the background is a lot brighter than the area that the subject is actually in, which is always kind of challenging when doing photography. Lighting is one of the most difficult things to learn as a beginner, and it doesn't get easier as you progress through your skills, but you do kind of learn to manage it more and how to edit and control that lighting better. The fact that this is a raw file, I was able to bring my highlights way down. I don't want to bring my shadows too high up, or I could have an issue with it looks kind of HDR like. I think I am happy with where I've got it right now. Everything looks pretty good, so I am going to sharpen it just a smidge, do probably 84, 85. That looks pretty good. It's not as noisy as the previous photo. I think I adjusted my ISO since then, so I'm going to do Command-Shift-E, and then in here I'm going to say dark-eyed junco in busy tree with a lot of twigs and sticks. I'm very picky on my naming because I obviously have a ton of edited files, and I usually export them all to a folder called edited pictures, unless it's like work for a client. Then I'll have a separate folder that I put that in, so it's easier to sort. But for all of my personal work, I'll put it all there, so that can be a little, it can be hard to name files, so I'm always very particular on what I name it. Oh, okay, here's the photo that we started editing a moment ago before we went back to the other. So this one I will be bringing into Photoshop. I'm going to bring up the contrast first and foremost because the background is very bright, but the subject itself is kind of underexposed. So in this scenario, I'll bring up my exposure, and then I usually bring down my highlights, and I bring up my shadows a lot. And usually when I bring up my shadows, I'm going to bring up my whites for this scenario, and then I'm going to bring down my blacks. And I'm going to go ahead and bring down my exposure as well. Right about there is where the exposure should be for the sky, but obviously I'm not able to do that because of the unfortunate lighting scenario. So when things like this happen, you just got to kind of mess around with it. I'm actually going to bring my white balance a little cooler for this, because when you're dealing with like harsh light, when you cool down the temperature of the photo, it's going to make the sky appear a little bit more blue, which does kind of make people think that, oh, I can kind of see the sky, even though it's really just kind of washed out and overexposed. Okay, so this doesn't look horrible. I've had worse lighting scenarios, but for what I was dealing with, this looks pretty decent. You can see like the sky looks kind of blue. It looks like we do have some chromatic aberration up in here, so I'm going to mark that. I'm not sure if that'll do much for it. In this case, it didn't do a lot. Oh yeah, it helped a lot actually. It just hadn't did it yet. It took it a second. So I find that if there is a lot of chromatic aberration in a picture, that little tick box there will help some, but it doesn't always help. So if it doesn't, and there's no like purples or magentas in the photo, I will come up here to my saturation tool and just kind of bring down the purple and the magenta, and it makes the chromatic aberration a little less obvious. So I am going to sharpen this photo probably to about 80 because it is pretty sharp already, so I don't want to overdo it. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring the file into Photoshop. Okay, so I am now in Photoshop, and I'm pretty much going to follow the same process as last time. So what I'm going to do while I do this is speed it up. All I'm going to do is be copying the bird and doing, I'm probably not going to do high pass on this one because it's already so sharp it doesn't really need it. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of Gaussian blur and Then once I do that, I will join back with you all and show you the other steps that I'm going to do to make this photo look better. Okay, so I have just added the Gaussian blur, and you can see quite a bit of difference in this stick here. Obviously, my kind of blurring out of that wasn't perfect, because you can see that a little bit of the bird, like right up close to the stick, kind of right in here, is blurred as well. But that's not very noticeable, even when you do zoom into the photo, unless you know it's there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dodge and burn. I'm going to copy this layer by doing Command C and Command V. And what I like to do, there are so many ways to dodge and burn, but this is the way that I prefer. I'm going to go into Edit and I'm going to click Fill. When I click Fill, under Contents, I'm going to go and select 50% gray. I do have a full video where I go more in depth of everything that I do when I edit. If you want to see that, you can click in the right corner of the top right corner of the video to see kind of the full process. So once I get that ready, what I do is I will get a brush, use the brush tool, and just kind of in the dark areas I will brush in the dark, and in the light areas I'll brush in the light. And I usually do this by black and white. If it's like a really colorful image, sometimes I will actually use like my color select tool, as you can see here, and click an area and color it in using that. But for this particular scenario, I'm not going to be doing that. So also, I never bring my opacity all the way up, or it looks really weird. So right now I've got it on 12%, which is actually a little high. I'm going to move it down to about 6%, and I'm going to color in the dark areas of the bird, which you can kind of see as it's doing it that you're not noticing a huge difference, but you can just kind of see that it is darkening it a little. And once I'm done doing this, I will just show you like the adjustments that the brush has done on its own on top of the layer, which are just very subtle, and it's kind of difficult to notice. So right now I'm just really coloring in this bird on like the dark of its feathers. Now I'm gonna lighten it up. You can kind of see how it's making it just a smidge wider and a little bit brighter as well as I brush over this using the white. This is pretty interesting, and it's not easy to do either. So now I'm going to take the black and just kind of go over some of these sticks, because I want them to be darker rather than brighter, because the background is super bright already, so it's going to look better if these sticks are darker. I'm going to bring my opacity up a bit, probably to around 10 or 11, and just color over some of them. You can see that they do get darker as I do it. This is a more tedious process, and it's something that can be kind of difficult to do. I usually don't ever take my time and do it perfect unless it could be like a really award-winning photo, which this one obviously isn't. This one probably wouldn't win an award, but I always try to do it the best I can. But I don't want to spend a whole big portion of the video doing this, so I'm also going to speed up this segment right now. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm sure I did miss some sticks here and there, but I tried to color most of them in for the most part. So now I'm going to go ahead and export this photo, and then we'll go back into Lightroom one more time, and I will edit the cardinal photo. But actually, I did just realize I forgot to show you all what the dodge and burn did. So here is the blank layer. You can just see where I've colored in the sticks. And here I colored in the bird quite a bit. That's just the areas where I darken and lighten them. Obviously it's not making a huge difference to the photo, but you can see that it does just, when I overlay that, it's going to darken it. Here's me selecting it and unselecting it. You can kind of see everything that I've done with it. So I do think it adds a little bit of contrast and just kind of makes the image look cleaner, in my opinion. So now I'm going to go ahead and export it, and then we will go ahead and go back into Lightroom. Okay, so now once again we are back into Lightroom. I'm going to find the closest and what I find to be the best shot of this cardinal. At this point, when I realized that I was overexposed, the photos are not as sharp as what some of the ones that were overexposed were. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in and... Okay, I really like the pose in this one. I think this is the one that we're going to go with and edit. Hopefully the fact that this is a raw file, we can make it look kind of decent, because it is so washed out and just so overexposed right now. So the first thing is obviously bring that exposure down, bring that contrast up, and it looks really warm. I think the white balance was off here due to the image being overexposed. So I'm cooling this down quite a bit. I think right about there looks pretty nice. I'm also going to bring those highlights down. Not too far, but bring them down quite a bit. I'm going to up my shadows just a hair. I don't want to do too much with that. I'm also going to up my whites. And after doing some of that, I need to bring the highlights a little more down once again. The bird is just so red and so saturated because it's in amazing light. I'm going to add a little bit more clarity than what I usually do, because that does reduce a little bit of like saturation, and it also kind of boosts the contrast a little more. So in that scenario we kind of needed that, but I'm gonna up the saturation just not too much there, but a little bit, and then I obviously up the vibrance as well, because I do that in most photos. I'm gonna scroll down to sharpening, and I'm gonna sharpen it quite a bit. My ISO is at 640 here, which was really way too high for this photo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce some noise, even though it doesn't really need to be noise reduced. I'm going to do that anyways. The bird, as you can see, is really sharp. So in Photoshop, I'm not going to need to use high pass or anything, but I am going to do a little bit more additional work to this photo in Photoshop, which is just kind of blurring out the surroundings with Gaussian blur, and then I will maybe dodge and burn. I haven't decided on that yet, but we'll see. So let's go ahead and open this photo in Photoshop. So now that we are here in Photoshop, I'm going to go ahead and edit the image. Like I said, I'm going to add some Gaussian blur, and then I might dodge and burn. I'm going to speed up the entire process because I've pretty much showed you all everything that I do when I do this. So I'm going to go ahead and do it, and then I'll talk to you all once I have completed the process. Okay folks, so here is the final image. I have completed my editing for the day for this shoot, so I'm going to go ahead and talk back with you all and close up the video now. So I actually was able to fit all of the photos in for this wide shot, so that's pretty cool. You can see my entire office. Well folks, that is all for today's video. It was a pretty long one, but you got to see my entire wildlife photography workflow. It's no easy task to edit all of those photos and to get out in the field and take them, but maybe you have a little more of appreciation for what I do now that you've seen how long it takes in the entire process. So when I'm out for a full day, it took me about 30 or 40 minutes to edit those 4 photos that I did. When I'm out for a full day and I come home with like 500 to 1,000 images, that takes a really long time to go through and edit those photos, 3 or 4 hours. So I really do appreciate you all watching this video. If you have watched this far and you've not subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Also, make sure to like the video. It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. We're not far from 1,000 subscribers, so any little thing that you do to help is much appreciated. Hit the notification bell when you subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope each and every one of you all have an amazing day.